One day, I was watching TV with my wife, and there was a news report about an electric vehicle fire. Electric vehicle fires in underground parking lots are not a new occurrence. Electric vehicle fires are known for being extremely intense and prolonged due to battery thermal runaway. They don't go out easily either. The fire is so intense that it can quickly spread to nearby vehicles. The smoke is also enormous due to the chemicals in the battery. So, I checked the comments on the news to see what people thought about electric vehicle fires in underground parking lots. As expected, people say that installing charging stations above ground, instead of underground, would solve all these problems. They also wonder why charging stations are even installed in underground parking lots. Curious, I searched to find out why charging stations are installed in underground parking lots in Korea. It turns out that there's a law requiring a certain amount of charging infrastructure, regardless of whether it's underground or above ground. I'm not sure how effective this is. In any case, through repeated news like this, I discovered the first problem: electric vehicle fires in underground parking lots. One day, after finishing a gathering, I went outside to catch a taxi to go home. Within a few minutes, I got a taxi, and by chance, it was an electric vehicle. While riding, I suddenly became curious. I wondered what the taxi driver thought about electric vehicle fires. So I asked him about it. He told me that he really likes it because there's nothing to repair, and he doesn't have to change the engine oil. Still, I felt the driver might know of some issues, so I asked him again if there were any inconveniences. He replied that since he works at night and returns home in the morning, there are plenty of charging spots available in the morning. But for others, who usually work during the day and come home at night, there's no place to charge in the evening. So every evening, people scramble to charge their cars first. It was only after hearing the driver's story that I realized, in addition to electric vehicle fires in underground parking lots, there was a second problem: disputes over charging. I got out of the taxi and sat on a bench in the apartment complex. I began to think deeply about how to solve both the first issue mentioned in the news and the second issue the taxi driver had talked about. First, I thought that, as suggested in the news comments, separating the charging stations from the underground parking lot and placing them above ground could solve the first problem. Then, by offering a charging reservation service through an app, I believed we could solve the second problem that the taxi driver mentioned. But anyone could come up with these ideas. So I suspected that if such common ideas haven't become a reality yet, there might be another underlying problem. I imagined a scenario to verify this for myself. What would happen if we separated the underground parking facilities from the above-ground charging stations and offered a charging reservation service? First, the user would bring their car to the charging station at the reserved time, and once the charging is complete, they would move the car back to the parking facility for others to use. I thought this would cause inconvenience for users, having to go back and forth. Of course, if cars had autonomous driving, users wouldn't need to move the car themselves, which would solve this problem. However, since autonomous driving is not yet at a stable level technically, it's not a practical solution right now. That's not the only issue. If a large number of people want to charge their cars after work on weekday evenings, some might still be unable to access the service, even with a reservation system. So I started thinking about how to refine the existing solution to eliminate user inconvenience. But at that moment, no solution came to mind, no matter how hard I thought. Still, I wasn't discouraged. The reason is that I believe that by trying to solve problems, I'll eventually come up with a solution, even by chance. One day, my wife asked me to go with her to a newly opened department store nearby. She mentioned that there was a beautiful garden and an atmospheric cafe on the roof. So, for my lovely wife, I drove to the department store. Since it was my first time there, I was confused about where the parking entrance was. At that moment, my wife pointed out, "It's to the right. The left is for VIP valet, so we need to go to the regular gate." I followed her directions and drove toward the regular gate. I jokingly told my wife that when I make a lot of money, I'd like to use valet parking too. At that moment, a sudden inspiration struck me. Yes, valet parking. The tangled puzzle instantly fell into place. First of all, with valet parking, users wouldn't need to walk back and forth. Additionally, with valet parking, users could receive charging services during their sleeping hours, which could help distribute peak charging demand. As I thought about the benefits of valet parking, I started to see a lot of new features. Hydropower and wind power plants operate at night, leading to surplus energy that goes to waste. So I thought that combining valet parking with charging reservations could utilize this wasted nighttime energy, allowing people to charge at a lower rate during the night. This could also spread out the peak electricity usage to the night, preventing blackouts. Moreover, although AI is leading to job losses, valet parking could create new job opportunities. For reference, when deriving solution principle, breaking them down into three elements, composition, function, and effect, can help easily identify the solution principle. I'll continue to show how these three elements apply at each step, so please pay attention. Even without creating an actual product, if the derived solution principle involves new technology, it can be patented and invented by anyone. At that time, I wanted to file a patent immediately, but I considered that the world is vast, and there might be others with similar ideas. Therefore, I decided it was necessary to re-verify from a patent perspective. Verification from a patent perspective is typically known as a prior art search. A prior art search is the process of checking for existing similar technologies. I had to decide whether to withhold the patent due to similar existing technologies, whether to further refine the solution due to some similarities, or whether to proceed with a patent application because there were no significant similarities. I conducted a prior art search using the Kipris site provided by the Korean Patent Office. I simply searched using the keywords electric vehicle and valet parking. Even with just these two keywords, most relevant technologies appeared. I skimmed through the first page of results and found two prior art documents that seemed most similar to the derived solution principle. All the prior art documents included compositions related to autonomous driving, valet parking, and charging reservations. Given that these prior art documents include similar compositions to the derived solution principle, could it mean that the derived solution principle cannot be patented? Of course, that might be the case. However, having come this far, I couldn't give up easily. So, I examined the prior art documents closely. Upon detailed examination, I discovered a very small difference. The small difference was the place. Prior art 1 applied to tourist sites, prior art 2 applied to malls or department stores, while the derived solution principle applied to apartment complexes. Why is this small difference in place important? Because the functionality and effects of valet parking vary depending on the place. The places in the prior art documents are not residential facilities where people sleep at night, like apartment complexes. Therefore, the prior art documents do not offer charging services via valet parking during the night, and they do not have the various effects associated with such functionality. In other words, even if the compositions of the prior art and the derived solution principle are similar, if there are differences in functionality and effects, the solution principle can be recognized for a patent. Isn't it fascinating? I was able to validate the function and effect in the three elements of the solution principle through this small difference in place. Before filing the patent, I considered whether there were any missing aspects of the solution principle based on the prior art search. I discovered a very important function and effect. Typically, charging stations are clustered in places like tourist spots, malls, or department stores. However, it's oddly the case that in apartment complexes, charging stations are distributed across different buildings. When charging stations are dispersed, the electrical distribution facilities become complex and risky. So I thought that if the charging stations were consolidated in one location above ground, it would be easier and safer to manage the electrical distribution facilities, and maintenance costs would be reduced. Additionally, while people currently drive their own vehicles, the future will likely see a shift to autonomous driving. Inserting valet parking into the solution principle, I found that it could bridge the technological gap between manual driving and autonomous driving. Through this function, I also discovered the effect of providing flexible and complex services to people. By repeatedly going through the processes of discovering problem, deriving solution principle, and validating them, I was able to develop a solution principle and file for a patent. Thus, I received the patent registration. After obtaining the patent, I also filed for an international patent through the PCT. So, how did I draft the patent application and respond to the examination? The process is the same. As you can see, with the 3 elements of the solution principle, you can draft a patent application and respond to the examination. This is why the 3 elements of the solution principle are very important. Anyone with a problem-solving mindset can derive solutions and resolve issues through those solutions. Additionally, if you accumulate such experiences and knowledge, they will definitely help with new problems that arise in the future. Furthermore, if you maintain a problem-solving mindset and consistently build knowledge based on these experiences, you may find yourself lucky enough to derive solution principle you hadn't previously considered, just as I did with valet parking. Finally, I want to offer a word of advice. I am not asking you to determine whether the derived solution principle of valet parking is true or false. I wanted to share with you how I derived the solution principle of valet parking and the process behind it. In other words, I hope that when you face a problem, you apply similar methods or processes to derive a solution principle. I would appreciate it if you understand my intention.